if you are not ready to die to yourself and unite yourself to another person and become one flesh and suffer with them for the rest of your life, and you're not ready to build a family together with them and reproduce life, then you are not ready for sex. And that is not a bad thing. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Adriana, Adventurous Catholic, and today we are going to be talking about saving sex for marriage. So what made me choose this topic? We live in a culture that is either so obsessed with sex that it is promoted everywhere that you turn your head, or people talk about sex as if it's no big deal. It's like whatever, everybody does it, everybody should do it, or they think that if you have not had sex, you are so afraid of it. They don't get it. Sex is not bad. It is sacred. We believe that sex is so sacred and it's so special, which is why we should save it for the right time and the place which God intended it to be. For the right person who God calls us to live with for the rest of our life. There are two purposes of sex. One is unity and the second is reproduction. So if you are not ready to die to yourself and unite yourself to another person and become one flesh and suffer with them for the rest of your life, and you're not ready to build a family together with them and reproduce life, then you are not ready for sex. And that is not a bad thing. So when we understand this, when we understand God's purpose for sex, then we don't see it as something to be afraid of. On the other hand, we shouldn't be so obsessed with it and promote it because that's obviously going against God's plan. Fulton Sheen wrote this book called 3 to Get Married, and my boyfriend and I are currently reading it, and it's been amazing so far. I've loved everything I've read in it so far, but something that he says is he talks about how sex and love go hand in hand, and intimacy is something that we desire as humans, so it's natural. However, like I said, it must be done in the time and place which God created it to be done. So one of the devil's tricks is that he wants us to practice them outside of the time, place, and manner in which God intended it to be. So for example, there's nothing wrong with wearing short shorts or revealing clothing only to your husband, or vice versa if you're a man, revealing clothing only to your wife, only for their eyes and God's eyes, right? Not out in public, not out to the world. That's one example. Another example is drinking alcohol. There's nothing wrong with drinking alcohol, so long as it is in moderation. So everything has a time, a place, and a manner. And the devil is trying really hard to get us to do something that God didn't necessarily prohibit, but that God set boundaries for, and the devil wants us to fall out of those boundaries or to cross those boundaries. So something he says in this book is that the separation of soul and body is death. Those who separate sex and spirit are rehearsing for death. And with that, he says that animals separate sex and love, but humans are not supposed to do that. We are not supposed to separate sex and love because they go hand in hand. In addition to this, we can read in the catechism of the Catholic Church, not because the church created these rules, but because God did, and the church is here to stand up for that and to spread that truth. So the catechism talks a lot about this, but I'm going to read one little piece, which is section 2362 in the catechism. It says, "The acts in marriage by which the intimate and chaste union of the spouses takes place are noble and honorable. The truly human performance of these acts fosters the self-giving they signify and enriches the spouses in joy and gratitude." So again, there's nothing wrong with sex, but so long as it's done in the intimate union of husband and wife. 2:363 says, the spouse's union achieves the twofold end of the marriage, the good of the spouses themselves and the transmission of life. These two meanings or values of marriage cannot be separated without altering the couple's spiritual life and compromising the goods of marriage and the future of the family. The conjugal love of man and woman thus stands under the twofold obligation of fidelity and fecundity, which, as I mentioned earlier, is unity and reproduction. So now that we know that this is God's purpose for our life, then we can see that it is no wonder He gives so many graces to the couples that really do things the right way and save themselves for marriage. I mean, divorce rates are so much lower for people who save themselves for marriage than for people who practice sex before marriage. A lot of people say, oh, it's good to live with someone to see how compatible you are with them and to see if you really like each other and meant for each other. Well, then in that case, don't even get married. Like, what's the point if you are going to be seeing this as something temporary to begin with? It's not even a commitment. At the end of the day, it's living like animals. What is the point of saying that sex should be guarded for someone who you really love, but it is so easy for you to trust and love someone and give yourself to them outside of the commitment under the eyes of God? So I'm bringing this up not to criticize those who have fallen into this temptation, because I know as well that there are a lot of people out there with really good intention and who seek to strive for holiness and who want to do things the right way and unfortunately fall into that temptation, but get up and try again. So my words shouldn't be taken as, criticizing those and saying that you're going to hell because you slipped into this temptation. Though it is a mortal sin, ultimately God looks at the heart of those who trust Him and who know Him and seek to serve Him. But more than anything, I am speaking about people who just completely put God off to the side and don't seek to follow His plan. Once you slip into mortal sin, other sins that are venial or so slight become nothing. Like, it's so easy to fall into everything else. When a couple really strives to do God's will, and like I said earlier, even if you've slipped and fell in the past, if you are getting up and trying again, God is going to give you the graces you need to sustain a marriage. People who save sex for marriage are less likely to divorce. Unfortunately, though, it is very few people who really do save themselves for marriage, because the pressure is so strong. The pressure out there, especially in high school, when we just hit puberty and our hormones are going crazy. People make fun of each other if you are still a virgin, and this makes people feel like they're so behind the times or they're doing something wrong. Another thing is when we meet a lot of people who lost their virginity early on or at some point in their life before marriage, it's easy to lose hope and think, well, I'm never gonna find somebody who is truly saving themselves. And that discourages us sometimes, and it can make us slip into the mindset that, hey, maybe it is okay now to give myself before marriage. But if you have had any of these thoughts before, if you're going through these tough battles with these thoughts right now, I am here to tell you that it is not impossible. People do it. People save themselves for marriage. My boyfriend and I are both saving ourselves for marriage. We are both practicing chastity and still virgins by the grace of God. So it is possible to stay pure. If you are still a virgin, do not be ashamed of it. If anything, you should be proud of that and rejoice and thank God every day for that grace, because that is really a grace that He preserves you from that stain, so that you may be able to wait for that marital union, which will allow you to be able to practice sex. And if you have fallen before, it is not too late to get up and try again. I know many people who I really look up to, holy men and women, holy individuals who fell into this temptation when they were younger, when they were away from God, and then they found God and they turned to Him and they started all over, and now they speak about chastity. And one example is Jason Everett and his wife Kristalina Everett. I believe she was not a virgin before, but look, now they are promoting chastity, and they do this for other young men and women to see that it is possible to wait, and they show you how. So I want to encourage you, listen to them. Other than that, I hope that you enjoyed this video and I hope you learned something from it. Comment down below if you like. God bless you all. Stay faithful, my friends, and I will see you all next week.